بالله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We concluded last week's lesson by making a start on the compulsory acts of wudu, and I mentioned that there are 4 compulsory acts of wudu. They are washing the face, number 2 to wash your arms up to your elbows, number 3 to do masa of your head, and number 4 to wash your feet. Now we're just going to elaborate on this particular topic, and in particular a masla which I forgot to mention last week. And that is that what have the scholars said? If a person was to read salah or namaz without wuzu, just say if a person for some reason he reads namaz or salah without wuzu, then what will be the state of such a person's iman and faith? Now the majority of the scholars have said that to read salah without wuzu is something which is unlawful and haram. However, a person will not be considered a kafir and a disbeliever. However, one opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi is that if a person reads salah or namaz without wuzu, then such a person is considered a kafir and a disbeliever. And scholars have commentated on this particular opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi, and they have said that Imam Saab's opinion of kufr and disbelief is only when he does it intentionally and with the intention to mock and jest the worship of salah and namaz. And sometimes people, to make fun out of namaz, what they may do is that they may read namaz without wuzu. And subconsciously they're thinking that namaz is not something which is important, there's no need for me to do wuzu, I just come and read namaz. Some people do that. They've got this kind of like, because they're not close to Islam, their iman isn't that strong, their iman is weak. So some people, they may have this kind of feeling that let's just read namaz without wuzu. So a warning to those brothers, as the opinion of Imam Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi quite clearly says, that if a person reads salah without wuzu, with the intention to mock the worship of salah, to mock the ibadat of salah, then such a person will be considered a kafir and a disbeliever. So therefore it's very important that when we come to do the wuzu, we have to make sure that the 4 compulsory acts of wuzu, which is washing the face, the arms up to the elbows, the masa, and also washing the feet, is done, otherwise our wuzu will not be done. Now in last week's lesson, we also made a start on the first compulsory act of wuzu, which is to wash your face. And I explained that what is the area of the face is from the tip of your forehead up to your chin and from one earlobe to the other. And I mentioned some masail with regard to if a person has got some kind of cream on his face or some other kind of like if a woman's got lipstick and so on, that I mentioned that because these things will act as a barrier to the water reaching the skin, so therefore it's necessary that the cream or the paint or the Tipex, these kind of things, or plaster or these plaster things, these kind of thick things, wax and so on, which prevent water from reaching the skin, that it's important and it's imperative that you remove that, you take that off, and then you do the wuzu. Now just one masla here which some brothers asked last week, and I promised them that I'll mention it in next week's lesson, is with regard to oil. In particular, the mechanic oil, which mechanics and so on may use in the garage. So sometimes that oil, or when you are working in the car and the engine and so on, sometimes this black murky oil may splatter and come onto your face, or come onto your arms and so on. So what is the ruling with regard to wudu? Now the masla with regard to the oil is similar to the ruling regarding paint. And that is that this murky black oil is so thick that it prevents water from reaching the skin. So you have to make sure that if anyone is working in the mechanic or the car or the motor trade, that you have to make sure that you wash the grease or the black oil off before you start your wuzu. Because if you don't wash it off, then when you are doing your wuzu, when you are washing your face and your arm, then the water, it will prevent water from reaching the skin underneath. So you have to make sure that you get rid of this black oil before you start your wuzu. Now the second compulsory act of wuzu, which is mentioned here under the verse وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, is to wash your arm up to your elbows. Now you have to make sure that when you are washing your arm, that you include your elbows as well. So in the washing, include your elbows. Sometimes when we are in a rush or when we are a bit quick with our wuzu, then we forget to sometimes wash our elbows. And it's very important, because if you don't wash your elbows or you forget to wash your elbows, then your wuzu will not be done. Hence the subsequent salah which you are going to read, that will not be accepted. So you have to make sure that you wash your elbows. And I may have mentioned this point last week as well, that in particular in the winter, when we come to the masjid or when we are home doing wuzu and wearing thick jumpers or thick coats and so on, so sometimes what happens is that when we are rolling our sleeves or our jumpers up, we don't take it above the elbows. We instead we just leave it just on top of the elbow. So therefore we do our wuzu, we wash our arm, but up to that area, and the portion of the elbow is left dry. So again, this is something which you need to bear in mind, and remember that you roll your sleeves up properly, because if you don't, and if that area is left unwashed or it is left dry, then your wuzu will not be done. Another mas'ala here with regards to washing your arm is, just say for example, if a person has been involved in an accident and half of his arm is chopped off. So what does he do? Does he still have to wash his arm or not? So the mas'ala and the ruling is that as long as you got some part of the arm there up to your elbow, it is still compulsory for you to wash when it comes to wuzu. Just say if you've been involved in an accident and half of it is chopped off, then that area you still have to wash for wuzu. Even to the extent that if a person, unfortunately, just say he's had a stroke and one side of that person is gone, like basically he can't move it at all. So even though you can't move it, so whoever is going to be doing your wuzu for you, they will also have to wash the arm. So what I'm trying to say is that as long as the arm is there, whether it's working or not, that's a different issue. And how you're going to read namaz, we'll look at that later on. But looking at it from the wuzu angle and from the wuzu side, any part of the arm is there, or if the arm isn't working, even then in both situations, you have to make sure that you wash your arm. The only exception is that if you got the artificial arm. If you got artificial arm, just say you were involved in an accident and your right arm's gone, and you've got the artificial arm instead, a plastic arm. So only in a plastic arm, you're not required to wash that, because obviously that plastic arm is basically like, your arm isn't there. So that plastic arm is just there for the sake of it, or just to help you here and there for little things. So if you've got a plastic arm there or an artificial arm, then you're not required to wash your arms up to your elbows when it comes for wuzu. Another mas'ala which is not actually mentioned in the text which we are looking at, but it's mentioned in other books of fiqh, and that is that if you are wearing a tight ring or any jewelry which is tightly fitted against your arm, then you have to make sure that you move the ring or the jewelry slightly so that the area which is below the ring is washed or wet when it comes for wuzu. Because again, just say for example, if you were wearing a tight ring, and if that ring was tightly pressed against the skin and you don't move it at all, then water would not be able to reach the skin underneath. So you have to make sure that you slightly move it, or the very least you take it off, or slightly move it so that the area where the ring was would be wet, so that your wuzu will be done. Again, if you don't do it, then your wuzu will not be done, because that small area where the skin was, obviously that has been left dry and washed, hence your wuzu will not be done. Now this takes me on to another mas'ala, another ruling, is with regards to wearing rings or wearing jewelry. Now, the ruling with regards to jewelry, the base ruling is that wearing gold or silver or using gold or silver is something which is not allowed in Islam. So generally speaking, using, say, gold utensils, gold plates, silver plates and so on, and this is something which is not allowed in Islam. And it's mentioned in a hadith which can be found in Sahih al-Muslim, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "La tashrabu fi ina'i al-dhahabi wal-fidda," that do not drink from gold and silver utensils. "Wala talbasu dibaj wal-harir," and do not wear brocade, wal-harir and silk. فَإِنَّهُ لَهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَهُوَ لَكُمْ فِي الْآخِرَةِ, because it is for them, i.e. the disbelievers and the non-Muslims in this world, and it is for us in the hereafter. So this hadith quite clearly saying that, generally speaking, for Muslims, to use anything gold, or to use any instruments or pens or anything which is made out of silver or gold, is something which is unlawful and permissible. Now from this base ruling, there are two exceptions. Number one is that women are allowed to wear gold and silver jewelry. So when it comes to jewelry, so women, again, they can't use gold or silver pens or gold or silver utensils, but they can wear gold and silver jewelry. And this is established from a hadith which can be found in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam quite clearly mentions the difference between men not being allowed to wear gold and silver jewelry and women being allowed. And the words of the hadith are, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Hurrima libasul hadid wa zahab ala dhukuri ummati," that the wearing of hadid, silk, wa zahab and gold has been made unlawful ala dhukuri ummati, for the males of my ummah. Wa uhilla li inasihim, and it has been made lawful and permissible for the females of my ummah. So clear hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam explicitly saying that gold and silver jewelry are haram for men, permissible for women. So that is one exception. And the second exception from that base ruling is that men, the only jewelry they can wear is a silver ring. And the silver has to be less than 4.86 grams. Has to be less than a mithqal, which is an Arabic word, like a particular coin or a particular wazn or a weight, and a mithqal equals to approximately 4.86 grams. So men, the only jewelry they can wear is a silver ring, and the silver has to be less than 4.86 grams. Now from this ruling we can derive that, number one, men are not allowed to wear necklaces. You see many brothers, they come to the masjid with necklaces. It may look cool outside, but it's not allowed in Islam. Again, sometimes you see some brothers coming to the masjid with bracelets. Again, silver bracelets or whatever, just coming with bracelets. Again, that is not something which is allowed in Islam. The only thing men can wear, and this is just permissible, it's not like acting upon a sunnah, because you may be thinking, well, you know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wear a ring. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wore a ring, but he wore a ring because he was a leader. And the practice during the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam time was that those who were leaders, they would wear rings for stamping purposes, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's ring was such that he had 3 words ascribed, or 3 words written in the ring, that was Allah, Muhammad and Rasul. I'm not sure which order, but these were the 3 words which were mentioned, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would use that to stamp. So for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wearing the ring, it was for stamping purposes. So if someone happens to be a leader in the future, and then you are then stamping letters and so on, then if you then wore a ring, then that's okay, because you will be acting upon a sunnah. But those who don't, obviously, who are not leaders and who are wearing rings, You're just acting upon something which is mubah and permissible. You're not going to get reward for that, for wearing a ring, and you can't use the hadith of Rasulullah to establish that it is a sunnah, but wearing a ring is just acting upon something which is permissible, where you're not going to get a reward, but at the same time you're not going to get a sin. So that's why many of our teachers and our predecessors have said that it's preferable for men not to wear rings, because there's no benefit in that. If it was, say, for example, you're getting sawab and reward, fair enough, I would have worried myself, I would have advised you to wear it. But when you're not getting any reward or sawab from that, then it's preferable not to wear it. But if a person wants to wear it for some reason, then fair enough, we won't consider that to be unlawful and haram. So that is the ruling with regards to men wearing rings. So going back to the masla which was in front of us, and that is when you are washing your arms up to your wrist, up to your elbow, so you have to make sure that any jewelry, in particular rings for men, you have to make sure that you kind of loosen it a bit, slightly move it so that the water reaches the skin underneath. Obviously for women, if they are wearing bracelets and so on, so they have to make sure, or bangles, that it's not tightly pressed against the skin, which is preventing the water from reaching the skin. If it is, they have to either take it off or just move it slightly to make sure that the water reaches the area below. So that is the second compulsory act of wudu. The third compulsory act of wudu is mentioned, because I'm just continuing from the Quranic verse, وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that do masa of your head. Now it is compulsory to do masa of 1/4 of your head. That is the compulsory amount or prescribed amount from the Sharia, which you have to do for your wudu to be valid. Now the main thing is to do masa of 1/4. So whichever way you do it, as long as the area of 1/4 of your head is wet, your masa will be done. So just say, for example, if someone wants to get one hand, he wets and it goes like that. So as long as 1/4 of his head is wet, his masa will be done. If he just wets his hand and just goes like that, or just does something like that with his head, as long as 1/4 of it is done, his masa will be done. However, the sunnah way of doing masa, I'm going to mention it here because this is something where a lot of people, they get mixed up. They're not exactly sure what is the sunnah way and the prophetic way of doing masa of your head. Now the sunnah way of performing masa, as mentioned in many ahadith, in particular a hadith of Sunnah Abu Dawud, where Sayyidina Uthman anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way he would do masa would be that he will wet his hand, and then with these three fingers, the little finger, the ring finger, and the middle finger, he will start from the front of his head, and then he will draw it all the way back. And then the wet side of the palm, he will then do masa of the sides of the head. And he will start from the back this time, and then move it forward. Now remember, now these two fingers are still wet. Then with the index finger, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would do masa of the inner area of his ears, and then with the thumb, he will do masa of the outer side of his ears. So this was how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would do the masa. I'll just explain it again. So he will use these three fingers, the little finger, middle finger, ring finger. He will start the masa from the top of his head, from the front, and he will draw it all the way back. And then with the wet palm, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will then move the palm from the back all the way up to the front. Then with the index finger, he will do masa of the inner part of his ears, and then with the thumb, he will do masa of the outer part of his ears. So this was how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would do the masa. Now, another ruling here with regards to masa is you have to make sure that you've got nothing on your hair which is waterproof. If there's any substance which is on your hair, such as gel or just for men and so on, like those dyes, because many of those dyes are waterproof. So if something is waterproof, then it's going to prevent water from reaching the hair. So as I mentioned before with regards to paint and oil and so on, if it's going to prevent water from reaching the hair, your masa and your wuzu will not be there. So you have to make sure that you've got no kind of waterproof gel on your head, you've got no kind of like dye over your head and so on. Now I'm just going to take this opportunity and just mention a few things with regards to dye, hair dye, like what does Islam say with regards to this particular masla. Now the masla with regards to hair dye is that it is something which is permissible to use. So you are allowed to dye your hair. However, Rasulullah ﷺ has advised us that if you do intend to dye your hair, then you should use two things. Number one is something called qatam or mendi. So these are two things which you should use to dye your hair. So just for example, something wrong with your hair or there's white hair and so on, then you should use a qatam kind of ingredient or substance. Qatam is like a kind of greenish substance, and mendi, I'm sure everybody knows what is mendi. So you should use those things to dye your hair. And this is mentioned in a hadith which can be found in Sunan Abu Dawud, where Rasulullah ﷺ has said, "Inna ahsana ma ghayyara bihi hadha shay al-hinna wal-qatam." That's the best thing which you can use to change or alter this white hair is henna, i.e. mendi, wal-qatam, and this substance called qatam, which is, as I just told you, a greenish substance which Rasulullah ﷺ and the Sahaba would use to dye their hair. Obviously these two are the preferable, but if you use any other substance and so on, then that is allowed. With one exception, and the exception is that it is not permissible to use black dye. You use any other colors, as long as it is dark and pure, but it is totally unlawful and haram to use black dye. And the reason why, it's mentioned in a hadith of Sunan Abu Dawud, where Rasulullah ﷺ has said that this, like people at the end of time, i.e. just before Day of Judgment, they will be using black dye. And Rasulullah ﷺ says that these people will not experience the fragrance of Jannah and Paradise. And the reason why Rasulullah ﷺ has totally prohibited, or he has been very stern with using black dye, is because there is an element of deception involved. When a person wears black dye or applying black dye on his hair, he is kind of hiding his age. Obviously, he should be like 30 or 40 or 50 and so on, but he will then apply black dye and he will try to make himself look young. So because of this element of deception, giving doka, as mentioned in the hadith, man ghashana falaysa minna fahiya muslim, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam saying that whoever deceives us, then falaysa minna, he is not from us. So because of that reason, it is considered unlawful and haram to apply black dye. So besides black, anything else like mendi and qatam or any other ingredients, as long as it is sparse and pure, it is permissible to apply. Now going back to what I just mentioned, mendi. Now, common question which is asked by some brothers, in particular from a Bangladeshi background, is can men apply mendi, especially when weddings go on and so on. So obviously the women tend to apply the mendi, but can the men also apply it as well? Now the ruling to that question is that it is not permissible for men to apply mendi. Mendi, these kind of things are beautification things. They are things for adornment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created women for adornment purposes, meaning that women itself are adornments for men. So if a woman was to wear jewelry and these kind of things, and obviously put mendi on her hands and arms and so on, if it's done with the intention to please the husband, then that is something which is allowed and hopefully she will be rewarded for that. But men, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created men not for beautification, not for like adorning purposes. That's only for women. Men, they are supposed to like, look fierce, look like warriors, shall I say. They should like have beards, even to the extent that it is considered dislike for men to shave their chest hair and their back hair, because these things are not qualities of men. So if a man is now, if he was to now apply mehndi on his hands and so on, you know, he's making himself look like a woman, he's kind of imitating with a woman. So because of that reason, it is not considered permissible or allowed for men to apply mehndi. Now going back to applying mehndi, women are only allowed to apply mehndi to their hands, their arms, their feet, and so on. But they are not allowed to apply mehndi to their face. Okay, so I heard this like sometimes like in weddings and so on, that women, they apply mehndi to their face. They put some kind of like decoration in their face and so on. So again, that is not something which is allowed, even though they may do it with the intention to please the husband, and that is not allowed. And the reason why it's not allowed is because the face is considered, out of all these body parts which we have, the face is considered as the most sacred, like, you know, the one which you have to respect them the most, because obviously on the face, you know, a beauty of a person, it's a very delicate area of the body. So therefore, as mentioned in the hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has prohibited us from striking or hitting someone in the face. You can hit someone if you want, if they are being naughty and so on, even kids who are in mosques and so on, but you shouldn't hit them on their face. So face is a delicate area. It's an area where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed many of His blessings, such as the eye, the nose. These are all blessings from Allah. So you should not apply these kind of things, mehndi, on the face, because obviously it goes against the hadith. And from this particular ruling, we can also understand and derive that sometimes, especially when the World Cup comes on, that you see kids or people, talking about Muslims here, they kind of draw the flag of St. George on their face and so on. So again, that would not be allowed. Okay, that's a different issue about, you know, having the St. George's flag. Obviously, that is something which is not allowed to drape you on your cars or on your bedroom windows, because, you know, the St. George's flag was used by the Normans to attack Muslims in Palestine, you know, the Crusades and so on. So obviously, we shouldn't be going around having flags on our cars or on our bedroom window, and then on top of that, to actually draw the St. George's flag on our face, then obviously that will be totally impermissible and something which is not allowed. So these things you need to keep in mind. The next compulsory act which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in this particular verse, وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ, and wash your feet up to your ankles. So the fourth compulsory act of wudu is to wash your feet up to your ankles. So straightforward, like just wash your feet. Just one particular issue here is, I'm just highlighting it. Obviously, especially when I try to do talks or speeches to the general public, I don't really want to actually mention what do other scholars say, like what does Imam Shafi say, what does these scholars say, and so on. But because of the time which we are living in, people want to know, like the person next to me is doing wuzu in this way or is reading salah in this way, you know, which Imam says that, like is in namaz that way or that way and so on. So we want to know like which, you know, mazhab is following and where it includes and so on. So because of that reason, I'm just going to touch on a very important issue here, and that is regarding washing the feet. Now, all the scholars, all the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah scholars have said that you have to wash your feet. Now, when it comes to doing wuzu, you have to wash your feet up to your ankles. However, the Shia say that you don't wash your feet, but instead you do masa over your feet. And the reason why they say that is because the way the Quranic verse is structured, it's got the word وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ. And they say that the word وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ, because there's different ways you can read the Holy Quran. So one recitation, the way you read it is وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ, but there's another recitation where it says وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ, which basically is connecting with the word wamsahu. And they say that you have to do masa of your head and also you do masa of your feet. You don't wash your feet, you do masa of the feet. However, as I just told you that the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is like an ijma, meaning a consensus of all the ulama. They have said that you wash your feet up to your ankle. Now some may be thinking, and you may be thinking to yourself, is that why hasn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala been more clear with this verse? Some people, they raise these kind of objections and they say that, oh, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala leave it وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ مِنَ الْكَعْبَيْنِ? Why didn't he add the word before وَمْسَحُوا or فَغْسِلُوا or something, so that people can clearly derive that here it means washing the feet or either doing masah? Why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left it, I should say, slightly ambiguous? Now the answer to that, and actually talked about this particular issue in today's tafsir at Coventry Road, is that there are many places in the Holy Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has left it slightly ambiguous. And the reason why is so that the reader and the listener of the Holy Quran, he can read it and he can come to his own conclusion, that he can understand himself. And this is very common. I mentioned this example of Sahih al-Bukhari, that there are many places in Sahih al-Bukhari where Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayh, he doesn't form a chapter. He just writes the word babun, which means chapter, and then the hadith straight away. He doesn't mention what this chapter is going to talk about. And the reason why Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayh did that is so that the person who is reading or studying Sahih Bukhari, he can, by reading the hadith, he can come to the conclusion himself, oh, this is what Imam Bukhari rahmatullah is trying to say from this particular chapter, or this is the chapter he was trying to explain. That's the reason why. So exactly same with the Holy Quran, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us, فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ, that contemplate, O people of intelligence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has advised us, told us that look around the world, look around the heavens, look around the earth, look around at the different animals, the atmosphere, everything. You should look around so that you can derive that there is one Khaliq and one Creator, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-powerful, and that everything which happens in this world, and that the world runs under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's system, runs under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's design. So exactly same here as well, that Allah has left it ambiguous. And because this particular verse which we are looking at is of a verse of Surah Al-Ma'idah, and this verse was one of the last verses to be revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when this particular verse was revealed, for approximately 18 years, namaz had been made compulsory. Like 18 years before, namaz was made obligatory by Allah. So for 18 years, the Sahabas, they have been performing wudhu and they have been reading namaz. And every time a Sahabi or a companion performed wudhu, he would wash his feet. There was no kind of objections or any difficulties regarding that. He would wash his feet and then read the namaz. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left it slightly ambiguous and open, He left it so that everybody knew, or the Sahabas knew, what was being meant here. And that was, وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ أَيِّ فَقْتِلُوا أَرْجُلَكُمْ, wash your feet up to your ankles. So it's like, for example, just say, for example, I do this lecture every week and I've been doing it for months. So when I say, for example, I'm doing this lecture after Maghrib, there's no need for me to explain, or I'm doing it in this masjid, because for months I've been doing it in this masjid, so everybody knows that the dars or the lesson is going to take place in this masjid. So exactly same with the order of washing the feet, because the Sahabas for 18 years have been performing wuzu, have been performing namaz when this particular verse was revealed. So the Sahabas automatically straight away understood that arjulakum ilal ka'bayn in this context means faqtilu arjulakum, wash your feet up to your ankles. Now one particular issue or masla here is that sometimes people, they have what you call cracks on their feet, and obviously sometimes these cracks could be painful. So the doctors or whatever, they may advise them that to put some kind of cream or some kind of Vaseline in the crack. So the question is that what happens when it comes to performing wudu? Now obviously the ruling is that you have to make sure that you get rid of that Vaseline or that particular cream when you come to do wudu, because obviously that area where the crack is, that is a skin. So you have to make sure that that area is clean, there's no Vaseline or no cream in that particular area. You have to make sure that you scrape it off and then you do the wudu. However, if it's one of those medications, like brother asked before, that sometimes like the doctor says that I need to have this cream on for say 6 hours. a day. Like I need to have it for this much amount of time. I can't take it off before. So in that situation, and if any namaz is coming in between, so in that situation, when you come to do wudu, if you just do masa over that cream, that will be sufficient, that will be okay. Okay, so you don't have to scrape the cream or anything off. In particular, sometimes it may be very painful to scrape the cream off. So if you have to have it on, or it's a bit painful scraping it off, so if you were to wash your feet and just do masa over that infected area, over that crack, then that will be allowed and that would be permissible. The next part of the text talks about the compulsory acts which we've already looked at in detail. So I'm just going to quickly go through the text. So Fardu Tahara, which means the obligatory acts of Tahara, is Ghaslul A'za'i Salasa, to wash the 3 limbs, which is the face, the arms up to the elbows, and your feet. And the 4th thing, which is Farz, is Wamasful Ra, is the masa of your head. Then a couple of other rulings are mentioned here, which we've already looked at in detail. وَالْمِرْفَقَانِ وَالْقَعْبَانِ تَدْخُلَانِ فِي فَرْضِ الْغَسْلِ عِنْدَ عُلَمَاءِ مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ خِلَافًا لِلزُّفَرِ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهِ, which basically means that the elbows and the ankles are included in the washing. Now when you wash your arms, so you have to make sure that you wash your elbows, and also when you are washing your feet, so you have to wash your feet up to your ankles and including your ankles. And this is the view of our 3 A'immas, our 3 Imams. And when we say our 3 Imams, it means Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi and his 2 students, Imam Abu Yusuf rahmatullahi alayhi and Imam Muhammad rahmatullahi alayhi. And obviously in last week's lesson, I talked about very briefly about Imam Yusuf rahmatullahi, who was he, and also Imam Muhammad rahmatullahi alayhi, and regarding his biography. Besides Imam Zufar, again, Imam Zufar rahmatullahi is also a Hanafi scholar. He kind of differs with regards to this particular issue. Then the next text then goes on to mention that it is first that you do masa of the head, miqdarun nasiya, equivalent to your forehead, which is obviously 1/4 of 1/4, because obviously the area of your forehead is approximately 1/4 of your head. So you have to make sure that you do masa for 1/4, and there's a hadith which supports this particular opinion narrated by Mughira bin Shu'bah anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went to the dumping area of the people, Fabala, he urinated, wa tawadda'a, he did wudu, wa masaha ala nafiya, he did masa over his, or equivalent to his forehead, wa khuffayhi, and he also did masa of his khuffayn and his leather socks. Okay, now the next section which we're going to start is those things which are considered sunnah in wudu. Things which are considered a sunnah in wudu. Now what I mean by sunnah is that if you did miss the mark, then your wudu will still be done, but the full reward you will not achieve. Remember, the 2 things which you always have to do, and if you act upon them firmly, then you'll be successful in this world and successful in the hereafter. And that is following the Quran and following the Sunnah and the ways of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And being practicing Muslim, we should always try and endeavor to follow every single Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these sunnahs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though it's a sunnah, so in terms of ruling, if you did miss a mark, it's not going to affect the validity of the wudu. But we trying to be good practicing Muslims, we should try and do every single sunnah, and including the sunnah of wudu. Now the first sunnah of wudu which is being mentioned here is ghaslul yadayni salasa, is to wash your hands 3 times. قَبْلَ إِدْخَالِهِمَا الْإِنَاءِ, before you place your hand in the bowl. Now this particular masla which has been mentioned here, they're looking at it in those days when people would do wuzu from buckets of water or from bowls of water. And it's mentioned in a hadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that when you wake up from your sleep, because you're not sure or you don't know where your hands have been during the night. You know, you could have touched your private part. You know, there could have been a spot and you scratched a spot and some kind of pus may have come to your fingernail. So because you're not sure where your hand was during the night, so before you place your hand in the bowl or in the bucket of water to do wuzu, you should wash it separately. So wash it separately 3 times and then place the hand in the bowl and then obviously do the gargling, clean the nose and then wash your face. So that is the sunnah of wuzu, and from here the scholars have derived that it is sunnah that before you start the wuzu, you should always wash your hands up to your wrist. Because just say, for example, if we didn't wash our, just say like even in this day and age as well, that we're always doing things during the day, we always like sometimes we may be looking after the kids, they may have, urinated or did poo, and we didn't realize some of the, the effect of the impurity may have come to your hand, and may have touched something which is impure. So just imagine that it was impure and we didn't wash our hands before. So we're just getting water and then putting on our face. What's happening is that we are in fact cleaning our face with impure and najis water. Therefore, it's very important, even though it's a sunnah, but it's quite important that you do actually wash your hands properly. Obviously, many of the massages provide soap as well. So, wash your hands properly with soap so that any kind of impurities or any dirt or any najis or impurities which may have been on the hand, then it will get washed away when you are washing your hands before you start the wuzu. So that is the first sunnah which you should do. The second sunnah which is mentioned here is وَتَسْمِيَةُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى فِي إِبْتِدَائِهِ, which means to do or to recite Bismillah. So before you start the wuzu, it is considered a sunnah to recite Bismillah. Number 3, the third thing which is considered sunnah is to do the miswak. Now I'm just going to mention a few things with regards to the miswak. Now the miswak is a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the scholars have written that doing miswak is and in particular in wuzu, is an emphasized sunnah. It's sunnah muakkada. And the miswak is one of those sunnahs which not only did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did or practiced upon, but it was practiced and acted upon by every single Rasul and Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's mentioned in a hadith which can be found in Sunan Tirmidhi, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, "Arba'un min sunanil mursalin," that there are 4 things which are from the sunnah and from the ways of all the prophets. They are number 1, al-khitan, which means circumcision. Number 2, was-ta'attur, which means to apply fragrance and itr. Number 3, was-siwak, to do miswak. And number 4, wan-nikah, and to get married. So all these things are considered as a sunnah of all the prophets, not just only of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but every single prophet from Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam's time all the way up to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there are many, virtues of doing miswak and so on, as mentioned in the hadith. Even to the extent that a great Tabi in the name of Abdullah bin Mubarak rahmatullahi alayh, he has said that those people who do not do the miswak or who refrain from doing the miswak, you should wage war against them the same way you wage war against a rebel. That a rebel, when he goes against Imam Haq or when he goes against Amirul Mu'mineen, and then the Amirul Mu'mineen probably has to wage war against them. Similarly, those who deny the sunniyat and the validity of miswak, or those who reject the practice of miswak, then war should be waged against them. So this is what Abdullah bin Mubarak rahmatullah has mentioned. Now just a few masail with regards to the miswak. Number 1 is that the miswak should be straight and not bent. So whichever tree which you're going to use for the miswak, it should be something straight and not bent. Number 2, it should be approximately 8 inches long, or equivalent to a handspan. Okay, so it shouldn't be too long, like a broomstick or something like that, but it shouldn't be like too small. Okay, again, these are like the adab or the etiquette of miswak. So if a person did have a long one, you're not going to, it's not considered sinful or anything, but it's preferable that it's equivalent to a handspan. Number 3, the thickness should be equivalent to a forefinger. So it should be this thick. So it shouldn't be, again, not that thick, but it should be equivalent to a forefinger. The 4th masla, the 4th ruling is that the miswak should not be used at both ends. Some people, they have this habit that when they use one side of the miswak, and then after a while they'll change it and then use the other side. So again, it should just only one side should be used for the miswak. Now the next thing is the way and the tariqah and the method of performing the miswak. Now the way to do the miswak is these three fingers, the index finger, middle finger, and the ring finger, it should be placed on top of the miswak, and the thumb and the little finger should be placed below the miswak. So the thumb should be placed on the top, on the head of the miswak, and the little finger on the leg side of the miswak. And you should hold it like that, and you should start the miswak on the right hand side. So you start from the upper layer, you do the upper layer first from the right hand side, and you will do it, and you will do it in a side to side movement. So you don't go up and down, it's going to be bad for your gums. But so you start from the top layer, the upper layer, start from the right hand side, and you will do miswak all the way up to the left hand side. Then after that you will do miswak, starting from the bottom, this time on the bottom layer, again starting from the right and all the way up to the left hand side. So after you've done that one, then you will rinse your miswak and you do the same thing again. Twice, then you rinse your miswak and do the third thing, then do it 3 times. So you should do the miswak 3 times. And as mentioned in a hadith of Abu Dawood, that you should finish off the miswak by doing miswak of your tongue. So the Rasulullah in practice, he always finished the miswak by doing miswak of his tongue. So this is how you do the miswak. Now another issue here with regard to the miswak is whether it is the sunnah of wudhu or whether the miswak is the sunnah of salah. And again, this is another issue which needs to be highlighted, because you probably sometimes see in some massages or some places where there are people just, when namaz is about to start, they are doing miswak. So what do the Hanafi scholars have said with regards to that particular issue? Now there's 2 things here. The first opinion of Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi is that miswak is the sunnah for both salah and for both wuzu. Okay, so the same way it is a sunnah for wuzu, it is also a sunnah before salah. So before you start your salah and in namaz, according to Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi, it is considered sunnah to do miswak. Sunnah muakkada, like emphasized sunnah. Whereas Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi says that doing the miswak is only a sunnah for wudu, but mustahab for salah. So even if you do see a Hanafi like doing miswak for salah, then you shouldn't revoke him and say you're doing something wrong. Even our scholars have said that it is mustahab and desirable to do miswak before salah. Okay, so even if he does it, then hopefully he may be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we won't revoke that individual. So that is something which we should keep in mind. Okay, the next sunnah very quickly is wal madmadatu wal istinshaq, which basically means gargling. So that is a sunnah as well. So when you are doing wuzu, it's a sunnah to gargle, wal istinshaq, and also to clean your nose. Wa masul udunayn, and to do masa of your ears. Another sunnah which is mentioned here was taqleelul lihya, to do khilal of your beard. The issue of beard, inshallah, we'll look at in next week's lesson. Wal asabi, obviously to do khilal of your fingers. Khilal basically means interlace your fingers and so on. Also, wa taqrarul ghasl ila salat, and to wash each limb 3 times. That is also considered as a sunnah. So it is compulsory for us to do it once, or to do it such a time where to make sure that you wash every part of your face and your arms, but to do it 3 times, then that is considered as a sunnah. Now before we finish, just a couple of rulings. One ruling which I should have mentioned earlier but I forgot is with regards to the beard, and in particular when you come to wash your face, then if a person's got a thick beard or a sparse beard, then how should he wash his face, or how should he wash his beard? Now the ruling is, we're not talking about the hair which is on the periphery, we're just talking about the hair which is on the beard. The issue regarding the hair on the periphery, we'll look at it under the khilaf section in next week's lesson. Now with regards to the hair which is on the face, if it's like a thick beard, the person's got like a thick beard and so on, which is on the actual face itself. So when you come to wash your face, it's not necessary for water to reach the skin underneath. As long as you just wash the outer part, then that will be sufficient. However, if a person got a sparse beard, like a thin beard, or like the brother here, like for example, like where some areas where you can actually see the skin and so on, And in that situation, you have to make sure that the water reaches the skin underneath. It's like it reaches the skin which is underneath the beard. Okay, so keep these two rules in mind. If it's a thick beard, you just have to wash the outer part. However, if it's a sparse beard, then as long as the water reaches the skin underneath, then that will be sufficient and that will be okay. Inshallah, we'll just leave it for this week. Then let's want to give the topic practice on what's instead of Do you have any questions that you would like to ask? Or
men apply for medicinal purposes?
Yes, for medical, but that's also, yeah. For venus, for beautification, it's not allowed. Okay, yeah, so you just do masa over the plaster and just wash the masa basically just wet finger, just wipe you over the plaster and then wash the other part. The issue regarding plasters and so on, what you're supposed to do is coming up later on in the section.
You have long hair. Is the hair that has to be wet, of course, of the hair or the head itself?
The head, yeah. So yeah, that's a very good question. If the person got long hair, so you just do masa of the head. Irrespective of how long it is, you don't have to do masa of the hair there. So when you obviously sunnah to do masa of the whole head in. So it's not masa of the whole hair. You don't have to go all the way back as long as it's do it to the head, then that is yeah, very good question. I'll come back to that issue later on. It's coming up in the istinja section. Basically, you can say, but I'll mention the reasons why afterwards. It's coming up in the istinja section when we look at that ruling that if you go into a toilet or nowadays you've got big bathrooms and so on, so can you actually say Bismillah? So if you've got bathrooms and you tend to do within the bathroom with the toilet next to it, so can you actually say Bismillah or read any dua? So we're going to look at that later. Yeah, like the other sunnah, they are like sunnah and muakkada, emphasize sunnah. And the ruling with regard to emphasize sunnah is that if you, like for example, in a hurry or something, and you missed it out just once in a blue moon, then there will be no sin for that. However, if you continuously miss sunnah muakkada, then eventually you will be sinful. So if you was like once in a blue moon, you were in a rush or you were back to the namaz and you just quickly did the fara'id, then obviously that would be okay. But if you get it into a habit, like for every salah that you're missing out, washing it 3 times, you're missing out the gargling and so on, then you may be sinful. Yeah, if it's again, if it's just like once, like in a blue moon, not making it into a habit, that's what I'm trying to say.
And is there like a cut-off in this wudu, like for example, you do everything, you try to wash, dry your face, you notice your elbows still dry, you just go back and wash it, or have to start it all up again?
Yeah, you just, it depends, like, yeah, this is another masala which I mentioned, you are getting doubts in wuzu and so on. So the scholars have mentioned that if you was doing or performing wuzu, if you look at if you realize that one part of the body is dry, like you say, like your elbows and so on, so you should just wash it there and there. However, if afterwards, after you completed the wuzu, and there's a doubt that whether you washed this area or not, then you should forget about it. Unless you know for sure that, no, actually I didn't wash my elbow, then that's different. Just go and just wash the elbow. You don't have to repeat the whole wuzu. But if you're doubting whether that is wet or not, then you shouldn't go back to the band, then leads to doubt and whatsoever.